Hi, I'm Dale from DaVincent Photography. Welcome to my channel. I was recently asked to come up with a shoot to introduce proper photographic equipment to some of our younger generation. The brief was to create a setup that would result in bright, colourful images, but without too much expense. After a bit of thought, I decided to rework one of my old favourites, which is oil on water. Frankly, it's a great shoot for anyone to do, from children through to seasoned pros. So, what do we need? Firstly, we obviously need a camera. Keeping the budget in mind, I'm going to be using the trusty Nikon D700. Once a high-end professional camera, you can now pick up one of these workhorses for well under £200. For the lens, I'm going to be using an old 50mm 1.8. It was for sale for £20 and has something that most modern lenses lack, an aperture ring. Now that is important because the next item is macro tubes. Under £10 on eBay, they're essentially just a metal cylinder that acts as a spacer between the camera and the lens mount. Moving the lens further away from the camera reduces the minimum focus distance, so you can get close to the subject. Getting close to the subject, it will appear larger in the camera. The downside of these cheap ones is that they don't have the contacts or the mechanics for the camera to automatically focus or set the aperture on the lens, hence the 50mm with an aperture ring on it. Next up is a tripod to keep everything in the right place. This is an ancient one. You can pick up one of these for well under a tenner. The last thing we need in terms of the photographic equipment is a light source. I find a simple speed light is best. I'm going to be using a Pixapro 580 Mark II flash and the Pro ST-IV trigger. They really are great little flashes and they won't break the bank. So now we need the items to create the actual shot. They are a glass. Tool is best, so I'm going to be using a pint glass. Something that the flash can fit in and the glass can then rest on safely. My lunchbox. The flash can be sealed inside this, so we have a little bit of safety as we're playing with water and electronics. Something to create the pretty colours. Tissue paper. You can use thin wrapping paper, sweet wrappers, anything colourful that's not too thick that the light can't get through it. That's all we really need, but a couple of optional extras are a second small glass that will fit completely inside the bigger one. Shot glass always works very well for that. Some clear plastic to protect the paper. If you're clumsy like me, you're likely to get it wet, so that's just a plastic bag. You can also use cling film. A torch, and a wooden skewer or a cocktail stick. We also need some washing up liquid and, of course, the oil. So, with everything that we need, let's get set up. Lens on the tubes, tubes on the camera, camera on the tripod, trigger on the camera, flash in the box, paper and plastic on the top, and then we fill the glass with water and then pop it in place. Don't put the glass directly over the flash. Tends to produce very flat, lifeless images. So for a starting point, I put the glass just beside the edge of the flash head. If you want to really make the oil bead up and hold its shape brilliantly, you can add the tiniest drop of washing up liquid to the water. This really does have an incredible effect on the droplets, but put too much in, it can also make the water cloudy. So now we've got to add the oil. I use a skewer to drip very small drops on the surface. Once you've dripped a couple of drops, you can then dip the tip to get much smaller droplets forming around it. The next step is critical, focusing. Firstly, we're going to set the aperture as wide as it'll go, which is the smallest f number on the lens. That gives us the most light coming through into the camera so we can see clearly. Then we're just going to adjust the focus ring until everything is sharp. If you go from one extreme to the other of the focus ring and can't get a sharp image, you may well need to raise or lower the camera a little bit on the tripod, then try again. If you're struggling to see what you're doing, shine the torch through the side of the glass at the water level. It'll form highlights on the edges of the bubble so you can see when they're sharp. One bit of feedback I received from my last video was that I didn't give specific camera settings. Try not to get too caught up in following another photographer's exact settings. Variations in the ambient lighting and the equipment that you're using may well mean that they won't work for you. That said, here are the settings that I've used to create these shots. Macro photography always has a very small depth of field, or how much of the image forward or behind the focus point is acceptably sharp. The greater the magnification, the smaller that depth of field gets. Increasing the f-stop number reduces the aperture in the lens, increasing the depth of field, but it also reduces the amount of light entering the camera. All cameras have a maximum shutter speed that they can work properly with normal flashes. That's known as the sync speed. It varies between cameras, but if you're not sure what yours is, 1/160th is usually the safest option. For the ISO, I'm setting mine to 200. Just gives me a little bit of wiggle room if I need, so I can adjust it up or down. For the flash, I'm going to start at its lower power setting and work my way up until I get an image I am happy with. As it's so close to the camera, you really shouldn't need much power at all, but the coloured materials that you've used will affect how well the light is transmitted. If you hit the maximum power from your flash and the image is still too dark, you can increase the ISO or open the aperture up. Try again. Or you could use thinner coloured material. If you're at the lowest power setting and the image is still too bright, you can lower the ISO down a bit, or you could close the aperture down, or you can add another layer of coloured material. And that's really all there is to it. From this point on, it's just a case of playing around with it and seeing what you can capture. Try things like adding the second glass inside the first. That can give a really defined edge to the oil droplets. You can also put other objects in the bottom of the glass just to create a more interesting background. Just get creative with it. I hope that you'll give some of those a try. Good luck, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on my next video.